Hello, this is Scottish Independence Podcast episode number 108. This time I checked in again with Ivan Mckee, who you may remember from this show before, and we also did the election podcast together. And he's now become our man in Westminster. He's been down there quite a lot recently, so we had a little chat about the shake-up that the SNP have given things down there, and Ivan had a little announcement to make as well. So we'll just go to the conversation, and I'll have a wee word with you at the end. Hi Ivan, how's it going?
I'm good, Michael. How are you?
A bit busy at the moment. We're having the house redone.
Oh, that's always an interesting time.
Particularly when you're trying to organise a wedding at the same time.
Oh, congratulations!
So it's a bit hectic at the moment, but I think it has been for you as well. It's nice to catch up. You've been down in Westminster a lot. Are you feeling quite foxy about it?
Oh yes. No, you're absolutely right. After the election, I don't think we've spoke since then, but after the election, I got involved supporting some of the MPs down in Westminster. And I've had 5 trips down there now, which has been fun. Gradually getting to see how the place works, working with the economy team and on the business portfolio as well. Just helping with some background research, helping some of the speeches, and thinking through some of the issues there. So it's been very interesting time.
We'll start at the start though. Some people go down there and they're sort of blown away by the majesty of it all, and other times it's just tourists wanting a wee look around and stuff. Other people, like myself, when I was there, I found it largely overblown and mostly ridiculous. Like, when you go in there, how does it strike you?
Well, it's obviously designed to intimidate or to put you in awe of the place. But if you go in with the right frame of mind, it kind of has the opposite effect. It's a museum, basically. The thing is so ridiculously out of date and past its sell-by date. It would make a fabulous tourist attraction. And frankly, if you took tours of people around there and told them that as late as the 2015 they were still using the place to make laws, they would laugh at you. But the theatre of the place is dramatic, but they need to build a new building somewhere else that's kitted out for purpose and move the whole lot to something that works as a seat of democracy a little better than the museum they've got at the moment.
So that's the point. So that obviously the building itself and the environment is maybe not conducive to good government, but what have you found about what's going on inside there with regards to good government?
Well, it's all part and parcel of the same thing, and it's all the ridiculous conventions that they've got. I mean, this thing about you can't clap, and how ridiculous. I mean, the place is too small, it can only seat about 400, so they'll kind of cram in and make all these strange baying noises when the other side's speaking. It's quite pathetic in a lot of ways. So, I mean, having said that, I think a lot of the work that goes on in the committees, etc., which is starting to kick up now they've got the memberships of the committees in place, I think there's a lot of work and a lot of detail goes on there that's probably pretty productive. It'll be interesting to see how that operates. But as I say, the main chamber is just theatre.
So, if you could be a bit more specific, you mentioned a couple of things at the beginning, but if you could be a bit more specific about what it is you've been doing down there.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, it's been working with some of the MPs on the economy team and in the business portfolio. So Michelle Thompson's on the Business Innovation and Skill Committee now, and she's made a number of interventions, obviously, in the main chamber itself on a number of speeches on productivity, on investment, on some of the economic aspects, and also talking yesterday again, or today actually, on the budget debates. So it's been working through providing some of the information for that and just chatting through the best way to approach some of those issues. And the other guys on the team like Roger Mullen, Ian Blackford, who looks at pensions. So working kind of with them on some interesting aspects of what they're up to. Because everybody's kind of finding their feet, finding the best way to get things done, how to be the most effective. And they're gradually figuring that out, and I think we'll see them being more effective over time as they figure out the details of how the plays work.
And you said earlier that the main chamber's theatre, and there's obviously a lot of rhetoric in the main chamber and things in the papers, but on this working level, how are the SNP people being received, all the Scottish MPs? Because obviously they're outvoted in the chamber, and that's one thing. But in the committees, are they, let's just say, are the other parties eager to have them involved, or is there a certain arm's length thing going on?
Well, it's very early days. I mean, the committees themselves have only really started meeting to kind of get the admin in place in the last few days. So it's a bit early, but from what I've heard so far, I think at that level it's fairly respectful and people understand we've got a great team down there and they've got a lot of value to add and a lot of contribution to make. But it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. But certainly in the main chamber itself, you can't actually see it when you're watching on television because of the way the microphones are set up. But the other side, the Tories will start to make an awful lot of noise to try and drown people out and put them off what they're saying, which is a bit pathetic, really.
So, if you could change one thing about it from what you've seen, what would you like to change?
Only one. I think if they put it in a proper building, that would go a long way to changing the atmosphere. I think that's the one. And they've got the opportunity to do that because they're about to spend X billions potentially doing the place up, stop it deteriorating and disintegrating. So they've got an opportunity to take the step and rehouse the whole shebang somewhere else. And I think that would change the atmosphere of the place. But so many of them are wedded to this way of working that it's difficult to see it changing.
So I also imagine that X amount of billions isn't going to come out of the English money for English buildings account. I imagine that's going to be designated the UK national project and Scotland will be playing a large chunk of it.
Absolutely, that'll be the way it goes as usual. Yeah.
So let's move it back up to Scotland for now. How would you compare, because I know you've been involved with various things in the Scottish Parliament as well, as a working Parliament, how do you feel the two compare?
Yeah, I think that the Scottish Parliament is obviously a more, on the surface of it, in the main chamber, etc., set up to be more of a cooperative environment. And I think that helps. And I think that the way things can get done there is more mature in some ways. But as I say, in the committee stage behind that, I think in both parliaments there's a lot of, from what I've seen, a lot of constructive work goes on there.
And that's the part that never gets any coverage in either of the parliaments. Or if it does get coverage, like on the various parliament channels, but nothing's really made of it. It's just on at sort of middle of the night and nobody watches.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, obviously it's PMQs and stuff like that gets the headlines, and that's what most people will see. But yeah, I mean, they've obviously got the Parliament channel itself. There's a BBC Parliament channel, but then the House of Commons has got their own feed that's on all the time, and you can go and watch catch back on that, which is actually the best way because they cover everything, all the committees and all the various meetings that are on. So if you want to go and see what's going on, that's a pretty good way to see anything very quickly.
One of the things I've noticed going back down to Westminster recently is it really does make, I know this is quite a sort of, it doesn't really get to the gravity of the issues, but it really does make a very visual impact when you see all the other benches empty and then all the SNP bloc are actually sitting there present in the Parliament for the debate. Yeah,
absolutely. They've done a great job in being present for all of that in numbers. Because, I mean, the way it tends to work is the whole place is ringed up with these bells, obviously, and when there's going to be a vote, the bell rings and everybody rushes in to vote. So the way it's traditionally worked is most of the Tory and the Labour MPs would spend their time around the place, in the bar or whatever, and then when the bell rings, they'll run into vote and then just troop back out again. So the number that actually sit and listen to the debates is minimal, but the SNP team have done a good job of being there in numbers when there's important issues getting discussed, which is great.
I also believe there might be something you'd like to say about the Scottish Parliament and who's in there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've decided to put myself forward for selection to stand for the Parliament next year. I think that if you look at it in the context of where we are, the job that needs to be done is to convince the people of Scotland that we're capable of taking the new powers, limited as they are, but hopefully more over time, on the economic side especially, and being able to use them to best effect, and also preparing for being the Parliament of an independent nation at some point in the not too distant future. So I think that's the piece of work that needs to be done, and I think we need a team in there in the next Holyrood session that are able to do that job. So I put myself forward for that, and let's see how it goes. But I'd like to be part of that, because I think the next 5-10 years in the Scottish Parliament are going to be transformational and a very exciting time to be involved in. Scottish politics.
I think it's also going to be a very challenging time in the Scottish Parliament with the way the wind is blowing in Westminster at the moment, or the way the wind's blowing in the Conservative Party, because there's a lot of, well, I'll say it right outright, there's a lot of nasty stuff going on. And the effect the Scottish Parliament can have in softening some of these blows from Westminster is going to be sorely tested soon.
Well, that's absolutely true. There's going to be challenges, as we know, in terms of the 12 billion cuts that are coming out of the welfare budget, as we saw in the budget from Osborne last week, and I was down last week when he made those announcements. So that's going to obviously have an impact, and how we respond in the Scottish Parliament to that, how we deal with it, how we mitigate as much as we can, is going to be an important issue. So there's that, and then there's how we can use whatever limited economic powers we do get to be able to develop and grow the Scottish economy. So there's a number of things that are coming together that need to be focused on and made to work.
Yeah, there's also going to be, I think, maybe a bigger schism between the parliaments, although there already is one. You know, with the human rights changes that the Tories want to make. I mean, here's a great chasm that's opening up between the two parliaments.
Oh, yeah, there's a number of areas, like you mentioned, where there's also a different direction and tight cooperation between the SNP team in Westminster and the SNP government in Holyrood to work our way through those. But yeah, there's going to be these issues that are going to be out and out divergence between where the Tory government wants to go in Westminster and where we want to go. And from what we've seen so far in the Scotland bill, I've sat through a few sessions of that down in Westminster. There's not much getting given away, if anything, by the Tories. So it's going to be a bit of a battle on all fronts. But that's what the team are there for, and they'll go on with that.
With the Scotland bill and the various powers that might come up, I mean, people like Wings Over Scotland have constantly referred to it as a poison chalice. Do you think that's a fair summation of it?
Well, there's complexity around about it. The devil's in the detail. So there's going to be. The Tories are perhaps going to do and try and position some stuff to make it difficult for the Scottish Government to operate with those powers. But I think the strategy needs to be, we want everything. We'll take as much as we can get because we think we can run best with it. And whatever we get, we'll work with that to make it work as best we can for the people of Scotland, understanding that this is just a one-way street. All that's going to happen over time is there's going to be more powers coming north at each stage of the process until we get full independence.
And that was going to be my next question. Where do all these potential splits between the two parliaments and the very different directions between them, where does that leave us for people supporting independence and hope it's going to come as quickly as possible?
Well, as I say, I think it's all moving in one direction. You can debate the pace of movement in terms of more powers or in terms of public opinion. But I think nobody would deny now that it's in many, many levels, it's clearly two different countries, and everything that happens that shows that divergence between Westminster and Holyrood makes that point and reinforces that for people. So I think that we're on that road. The timing of that, most people believe it's going to happen sometime in the next 10 years, and I think somewhere between 5 and 10 years is the most likely timescale for that, and that's what we should work on and focus on. While in the meantime making the best of the situation as it is.
Okay, so here's a really difficult one. What do you think the tone should be? Because I think a lot of people who voted yes at the moment, given the latest Tory behaviour, are basically doing quite a lot of I told you so to people who voted no. Do you think this is the right tone?
Well, I mean, people will make their own minds up. Obviously, that voted no, they've seen what's happened. I think there'll be many regrets, and people are smart enough to realise that themselves. So I think gloating over it isn't productive. I think people will realise that in their own good time, and certainly Labour, as the main unionist party north of the border, aren't doing themselves any favours with the way they're going about things at the moment either. And frankly, Labour down south in complete disarray as well. So the whole scenario there doesn't look too clever for them. But I think, gloating doesn't help. People will realise themselves over time with reflection what's happened and what is happening and what needs to happen next.
Well, yeah, Labour don't seem to be doing much opposing in Westminster.
Well, I think behind the scenes, when people recognised